Thank you. So this slide gives an overview of the interventions and the agreements that were discussed in this session. This was about enablers for job creation. So I'm not going to go into each one of the aspects of the slide. I think it's pretty self-explanatory and pretty straightforward. Suffice it to say that the discussion that came up really supported the interventions and the agreements that were reached. We did try, Chair, to stick to the fact that we're not generating new agreements, even though the temptation was quite great to generate new agreements, but I think we did somewhat manage to come up with suggestions that perhaps add more flesh or flesh out the agreements and the interventions that are already on the table. There are a couple of points perhaps that we would like to add, which were not quite reflected in the agreements. And these are generic, perhaps cross-cutting enablers as well. May I have the next slide, please? There's a critical issue of tracking, monitoring, and evaluation. And the discussion felt that we would be able to strengthen the agreements and the interventions, but also will be able to ensure some level of sustainability on the agreements reached, as well as be able to establish the return on investment. And it's important to flag here that the focus should not only be on those agreements that can be measured through numbers, but also to begin to understand how best to measure social impact. The next point about coordination of efforts at all levels, this came out quite strongly. And here we recognize coordination at all levels, and we also recognize that while NEDLAC is already providing a good platform for coordination, perhaps at a level where we really need to go into the nuances of the agreements and the interventions, we need to be thinking about different kinds of platforms where basically we are not going to go and negotiate positions, but we will be able to focus quite practically on the targets that have been set. And I think this is a crucial point because often we tend to, or social partners tend to second guess what each other is saying. And the idea is that we have to work in rhythm so that we understand the same things the same way. The issue of demand-led came strongly, even though it was put on the table in terms of the examples that were put forward. And we cannot emphasize enough, Madam Chair, the notion of demand-led, but in particular, the need to understand the nexus between demand and supply. And I think flowing from this issue of demand-led, the fourth industrial revolution, the innovation around that, but also the speed at which technological change is happening is something that was fleshed out. But also, this brings out the need for structured and purposeful partnerships, as well as the fact that within TVET colleges, we would really like to see work readiness training forming an integral part of delivery in the TVET colleges. And I think the one speaker after another made reference to learnerships. But I think underlying that is the realization that we need to be quite bold and not scared to rethink our approaches and models to skills development and to youth employability. So the idea perhaps of rethinking how we select young people and how we match them to fields of study where they are likely to succeed is something that we need to consider. And I must hasten here to add that this is not selection to exclude, but rather to ensure that we reduce wastage in the system and we enhance the throughput rates in the TVET colleges. The quality of workplace-based learning was also put quite strongly on the table, particularly in facilitating the transition of youth into the world of work. The last point in closing, Chair, is this whole agreement, that the realization that the agreement is meant to benefit young people. And therefore, young people should be the ones really that should be seen to be championing and promoting the agreement, and the need to cascade that into other levels of youth structures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rapporteur for Commission 3.